All right, Mark, so we've been diving into cloud databases, and today we're tackling the big one. Amazon Aurora versus RDS. This is a conversation a lot of businesses are having right now.
Oh man, this is the cool part. Thinking about where enterprises put their critical data. It's not just a technical choice, it's a strategic one. And Aurora and RDS are the two heavyweights in the AWS corner, aren't they?
Exactly. We did some digging, looked at the research. And there's a clear narrative emerging, isn't there? Aurora is often pitched as the performance and scalability upgrade.
That's the headline. And it comes down to architecture. See, with traditional databases, like RDS is based on, you've pretty much got compute and storage tied together on the same box, right? They scale together, for better or worse.
Okay, wait, let me get this straight. So with RDS, if I need more processing power, I might automatically get more storage too, even if I don't need it? Or vice versa?
Precisely. It's like you bought a combo meal, even if you only wanted the burger. Aurora takes a different approach. It's cloud-native architecture. So basically what's happening is, they decouple the compute layer from the storage layer. The storage is this distributed cluster volume that spans across 3 availability zones, automatically. This is a fundamental differentiator.
Okay, so they separate the thinking part from the saving part. That makes sense intuitively. But how does that translate to actual benefits for a business?
Jenny, hold up. Can we break that down? Think about scalability first. With RDS, you provision storage manually, right? You pick a size. Maybe 64 terabytes is the practical limit for a single volume. If you need bigger, it gets complex. With Aurora, because of that distributed storage, it auto-scales in 10 gigabytes increments, up to, wait for it, 128 terabytes.
Wow! Automatically up to 128 terabytes? Without me lifting a finger?
Yep. Isn't that something? And it scales up and down within minutes, sometimes even seconds, usually without any downtime. Then there's replica creation. If you want to read replica in RDS, you have to copy the entire physical dataset. That takes time. Aurora? Instant logical replication. Boom. You have a replica.
Okay, so scalability is a big win for Aurora. What about performance? We looked at that Samsung SmartThings case study. They saw a pretty significant reduction in latency after migrating.
They did. About a 40% reduction in global latency, which is notable for an IoT platform. The research shows Aurora can offer up to 5 times lower latency than equivalent RDS MySQL deployments, sometimes 3 times higher throughput for write-heavy workloads. Because of the way it handles data across those storage nodes, it's designed to handle more requests faster.
That's fascinating. So, it's potentially faster and handles more traffic. But I have to ask the obvious question. Is it more expensive?
This is where the "it depends" comes in. Aurora has a pay-per-use storage model, about 10 cents per gigabyte, and IOPS costs are bundled into that. RDS is more of a provisioned capacity model, and you pay separately for provisioned IOPS, which can add up.
Okay, so maybe for smaller databases, RDS is cheaper initially, but for larger, IO-intensive workloads, Aurora could be more cost-effective in the long run?
Exactly. The research points to Aurora being potentially more efficient for workloads over, say, 500 gigabytes that truly need those high IOPS numbers. It's not always a clean-cut comparison. For smaller databases, especially under 100 gigabytes, RDS can offer more predictable costs, particularly if you're using reserved instances for a stable workload. It's just a simpler billing structure for those use cases.
Good point. Reserved instances aren't really a thing with Aurora's on-demand side like serverless, are they?
No, not in the same way. And that brings up another angle. For basic, non-critical needs, Aurora's architecture, while powerful, might resemble over-engineering. If your database isn't seeing massive spikes or requiring millisecond latency, RDS could be perfectly adequate and less complex to manage day to day.
That makes sense. And beyond just performance and cost, what about durability and availability? How do they compare on staying online and not losing data?
The mission-critical stuff. Aurora boasts 99.999% availability SLA. That's 5 nines. How do they manage that? Again, the distributed storage. It maintains 6 copies of your data across those 3 availability zones using this clever quorum system for writes. Data is written to 4 out of 6 copies before acknowledging the write. making it very resilient.
6 copies? Across 3 locations? That sounds incredibly robust.
It is. Failover time is typically under 30 seconds for writes to failover to a replica. RDS, even with multi-AZ enabled, is usually a few minutes depending on the workload during a failover. And for data recovery, Aurora has a sub-second recovery point objective, meaning you lose less than a second of data if something goes wrong. RDS can be minutes.
Okay, so significantly better durability and availability with Aurora. What about newer features like serverless? Is that an option for both?
Great question. Aurora Serverless v2 is where it gets really interesting. Automatic, sub-second capacity adjustments based on demand. It truly enables that paper transaction model. RDS doesn't offer that same serverless option. It's still more about resizing instances manually when you see load changes.
That sounds appealing for unpredictable workloads. Sort of like managing traffic during rush hour without knowing how many cars show up.
That's a decent analogy. It smooths out those spiky workloads without you having to predict peak capacity ahead of time. What about upgrades? Nobody wants downtime for maintenance.
Right? The SmartThings folks mentioned eliminating cross-region latency nightmares and faster movement. Some of that is features like global database, but also cleaner upgrade paths. For Aurora PostgreSQL, for instance, they have blue/green deployments now, which makes upgrades much smoother. Zero downtime patching has been a focus too.
Blue/green deployments? That sounds like you set up a mirror and just flip a switch?
It's sort of like that, yeah. You create a mirror of your production environment, replicate data to it in near real time, perform the upgrade on the mirror environment without affecting production, and then, when you're ready, you quickly switch traffic over. It's designed to minimize risk and downtime during those crucial updates.
See? Clever stuff. It takes a lot of the pain out of those necessary maintenance windows.
Okay, so we've covered architecture, scalability, performance, cost, durability, serverless, and upgrades. It sounds like Aurora has a lot going for it, especially for demanding enterprise workloads, those that need high scale and uptime. Are there any downsides or controversies we should touch on?
Yeah, there's definitely the vendor lock-in conversation. When you go deep into a specific cloud provider's services like Aurora, which has a proprietary storage layer unlike traditional RDS, which uses more standard MySQL/PostgreSQL, migrating away later becomes technically challenging. Enterprises need to be aware of that commitment to the AWS ecosystem.
That's a fair point. You're really committing to how AWS does things.
Precisely. And like we said, for really small, non-critical databases, where uptime demands aren't stringent and loads are consistent, RDS might still be simpler and cheaper upfront. It depends on your specific needs, current infrastructure, familiarity, and scale.
And thinking about enterprise database decisions, it's not just technical, is it? Compliance plays a huge role.
Absolutely. Depending on the industry, finance, healthcare, certain regulations dictate data handling. Both Aurora and RDS offer features to help meet compliance, but the complexity of a distributed system like Aurora might require more expertise to ensure everything is configured correctly to meet those strict audits.
Something else to factor in. It's clear this isn't a one-size-fits-all answer.
Not at all. It's about matching the right tool to the job. You wouldn't use a sledgehammer to hang a picture, right? For heavy-duty, high-performance, mission-critical workloads with unpredictable spikes, Aurora is a strong contender. For simpler, predictable workloads, or if cost predictability on smaller scales is paramount, RDS is still a very solid choice.
Looking ahead, where do you see cloud database management going, and how does Aurora fit into that future?
I anticipate a continued move towards managed services. Companies want to offload that operational headache, right? And serverless is definitely growing. Aurora, with its serverless options and cloud-native architecture, seems well-positioned. You'll probably see more features focused on real-time processing, native JSON support getting better, and integrating with other AWS services, making it even stickier within that ecosystem.
So in short, Aurora seems to be the future-forward option with better tech for demanding workloads, but RDS still has its place, especially for simpler needs, or if cost sensitivity on smaller scales is the main driver?
Yeah, that's a pretty good summary. Aurora for performance, scalability, and high availability in demanding enterprise situations. The ones where every second of downtime or latency costs real money. RDS is still a dependable, solid choice. especially if you're already familiar with traditional database management and have less extreme scale or uptime requirements. It is the familiar path for many.
Well, that was incredibly insightful, Mark. It's clear there's a lot to consider when choosing between these two powerful database options.
Happy to dive in. Databases are the backbone of, well, everything these days. Getting it right is pretty critical. And this cloud-native stuff, it actually is quite important in how it changes the game.
It sure is. All right, everyone, that wraps our deep dive into Amazon Aurora versus RDS for today. Thanks for tuning in.